طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داعي.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa ba'd. When considering the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's fundamental identity as a servant prophet, a servant messenger, we have to consider the foundational relationship that he has in this identity, and that is his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the most beautiful representations of that was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's relationship to prayer. He loved to pray, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would say, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, جُعِلَتْ قُرَّةُ عَيْنِي فِي الصَّلَاةِ, that the pleasure of my eye is found in salah. وَإِذَا حَزَبَهُ أَمْرٌ, and if something were to overtake him of any matter of life, he would call to prayer. He would say to Bilal, radiallahu anhu, أَرِحْنَا بِهَا, bring us comfort, ya Bilal. And when you see the quality of his prayer, Sayyidah Aisha would say that you would see him pray 2 units, then 2 units, and 2 units. And she would say, لا تسأل عن طولهن وحسنهن. Don't ask about how long they are or how beautiful they are. This is a statement of ta'ajjub, almost to say like they were so long and they were remarkably beautiful. He really enjoyed his time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was where he found the fullness of his heart and soul. It was in sujood ma Allah, it was in connection ma Allah, it was in طول القيام مع Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Sayyidah Aisha one day saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam praying long into the night, and she saw him and she was confused by how long he was praying, because he was praying to the extent that his feet would swell. And when he was done praying, she asked him, Ya Rasulullah, why do you pray so much? Why do you pray this long? Why do you pray to the extent that your feet swell? Isn't it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has freed you from any wrong? Ya Rasulullah, you can't sin, you can't make a mistake. And the Prophet ﷺ gave Sayyidah Aisha the insight behind this prayer. He didn't pray often the way that you and I pray. You and I pray like we're trying to do 10,000 steps. It's trying to accomplish a particular goal. Like it's the number, it's just the check that I've actually prayed, that I've done an act of devotion. The Prophet did not pray that way. It was a very different spirit and ethos of prayer. Don't forget, it's the spirit of the servant prophet who's so deeply connected and in love with his master, Allah Jalla fi'ula. So what does he say? He says, أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. Ya Aisha, should I not be a servant that is profoundly thankful? Because the spirit of the servant prophet is a spirit of shukr. I am thankful to you, Ya Allah. I am thankful that you created me. I am thankful that you guided me. I am thankful that you bestowed all these graces upon me. Allah tells us about the graces and the guidance that He bestowed upon the Prophet ﷺ when He tells him, أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ الَّذِي أَنْقَضَ ظَهْرَكَ. Isn't it that we are the ones who expanded your chest? أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ. And we removed the burden. What was the burden? It was the burden of not knowing. The Prophet ﷺ did not have clarity. He did not understand when he was going to the cave of Hira before revelation. Why was he going there? Because he was seeking. He was seeking guidance. وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى. We found you seeking and we guided you. So the Prophet ﷺ feels profoundly indebted to Allah. And there's no place he wants to be other than with Allah. And the most beautiful space for him is in prayer. It's the intimate bond and connection that he can have with Allah at any time. It was the gift that was given to him when he went to the highest of heights during the Isra wal Mi'raj, and it was just him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this was the gift that Allah gave him. When you appreciate the spirit of this deep bond that he had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it was a bond of love and compassion and care, and then manifested in this thankfulness. I just want to stand and pray. I want to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala how much I appreciate. And so this time that I spend in devotional worship, it's a labor of love. It's a labor of thankfulness. I can't thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enough. And that's what Allah tells us, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you're to try to enumerate the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can't enumerate them. They're just too many. So if we were to pray every day, all day, without fail, without end, it would not suffice. But from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is that He makes it that 5 prayers equal 50 prayers. So it's as if you're praying all day when you pray your 5 daily prayers. And then imagine when you add on top of that the nafila prayers, and you spend time before Salatul Fajr, you pray in those late hours right before the break of dawn, and you're in devotional worship and prayer. Imagine if that's what you did, you and I. Imagine if we spent our time that before Salatul Dhuhr and after Salatul Dhuhr, I stand up and I pray 2 raka'at, 4 raka'at as an act of abdan shakura. Because I am trying to be an inheritor of the servant messenger, the servant prophet. So I stand in prayer, abdan shakura, a servant that is profoundly thankful. So of course I will pray 2 raka'at of sunnah. Of course I'll pray 4 raka'at of sunnah. Allah told the Prophet ﷺ, Ya ayyuha al-muzammil, qum al-layla illa qalila. O you who is cloaked, stand up in the night, witness the prayer. Qum al-layl, stand all of the night, illa qalila, or half of the night. Nisfahu, aw inqus minhu qalila, or a little bit less than that. Aw zid alayhi, or a little bit more than that. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. And recite the Qur'an with deliberation. Recite the Qur'an continuously, as much as you can, thoughtfully, with the presence of heart and mind. So Abdullah ibn Hudayfa ibn Yaman, one day he's with the Prophet ﷺ in the house of Maymuna, and Maymuna was his maternal aunt. She was the wife of the Prophet ﷺ. He went to go spend time. Why? Because Abdullah's father, Hudayfa ibn Yaman, sent him to go observe the worship of the Prophet. Because Abdullah could go in, he's a young boy. This is his maternal aunt's home. So he goes on a fact-finding mission. So he stands by the Prophet ﷺ. I want you to just see the beauty of this entire incident. He stands up to pray next to the Prophet ﷺ, and he stands on the left side. So the Prophet ﷺ grabs his ear gently and pulls him over to the right side, to help him focus, because he was a young boy, so he wasn't 100% present. So he gently grabbed his ear and brought him to the other side. And then Sayyidina Abdullah says, he started to recite from Surah Al-Baqarah. And then quarter way through, I assumed he was about to go into ruku', but then he completed half, and then he completed the entire Surah Al-Baqarah. And then I thought maybe he'll go into ruku', but then he completed Surah An-Nisa. And then he started Surah An-Nisa and completed Surah An-Nisa. Then he started Surah Ali Imran. And I thought he would go into ruku', but he didn't. He completed all of Ali Imran. And then he went into ruku'. And then every single time during that recitation, Sayyidina Abdullah says this, whenever there was a moment of istighfar, the Prophet would make istighfar. Whenever there was a moment to seek forgiveness, the Prophet would make it. Whenever there was a moment to glorify Allah, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would glorify Allah. He would say Subhanallah. Whenever there was a moment to praise Allah in those hours of recitation, he would praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Sayyidina Abdullah says, then he would go into ruku'ah. وَرُكُوعُهُ كَقِيَامِهِ. And his ruku'ah is like him standing, the equivalent. He would stay in ruku'ah as long as he stood standing. You and I can't even begin to fathom what that means. And then he went into sujood. And his sujood was like when he stood. The same length. But it wasn't, the Prophet ﷺ did not have a timer that he was trying to follow. It wasn't a deadline that he was trying to meet. No, he was just ma'allah, abdan shakura, a humble servant who's happy to be with his master, who's in love with his creator, who's just being profoundly thankful. It's a very humble disposition. And I believe, brothers and sisters, if you and I appreciate the spirit of the Prophet's worship, and how he worshipped and why he worshipped, then it will change the identity of our worship. That we're not going to just look at prayer and fast and reading Qur'an like some burden, like some duty, like going to the gym, something it's like this necessary, astaghfirullah, evil that I have to do. A'udhu billah. No, but rather it's where I find the fullness of my soul, the nourishment of my soul that is a breath from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I really find myself in a beautiful, humble connection to my master. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us prayers and moments of devotion ma Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that exude this abdan shakura spirit, this spirit of being a servant that is thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. بارك الله فيكم وصلى اللهم وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
يا ختام الأنبياء يا إمام الأولياء رحمة أرسلت طه منقذا بعد الضياع صلوات الله تهدى صلوات الله تهدى لك منا والسلام يا أبا القاسم يا من أمره دوما مطاع.